For our next session, supporting your workforce with exceptional HR service delivery, we're joined by Nancy Zoder, VP of HCM Product Strategy. Nancy will dive deep into the challenges related to supporting a blended or entirely remote workforce and share recommendations on how you can support employee questions and needs through a variety of different methods. Over to you, Nancy.
Thank you, Pete. Hi, everyone. My name is Nancy Estelle Zoder, and I'm the Vice President of Cloud HCM Product Strategy. Thank you for joining me to discuss how you can support your workforce with exceptional service and experience with Oracle Cloud HCM. Please be advised this presentation may include some forward-looking statements. Now, there's a lot of coverage in the HCM space on service and experience, and many times it's represented as workflow or perhaps with varying degrees of simplicity. However, HR service and experience cannot just be a seamless application experience. It's much, much more. It's about the entire experience you can provide to your workforce. It's about the personalized experience of the relationships you have at and with your organization. So during my time with you today, I'll cover what is relationship management, service, and experience expectations. Then I'll review personalized guidance needs. We'll then look at when automated support is acceptable versus when personal attention is needed, then wrap with the complete experience opportunity. So as we think about the various relationships each worker has at and with the organization, there are many. As an employee, I look to my senior leaders for the organizational goals and objectives. Then I will look to my manager to provide me with personalized objectives. And HR provides the service and guidance on the terms and conditions of my work. But we're missing a huge opportunity if we only address those relationships. There are peers and team members, resources in other parts of the business with similar skills and interests who can support or align with my career objectives and help me grow in my role, but also as a person. Understanding what those relationships can provide and make those connections will give the worker access to the information and opportunities they need to thrive. And when we think about service, it's about giving access to those relationships. And when we think about experience, it's about making the connections to the relationships and then the process connections to ensure access and guidance to information and opportunities. But of course, without trust in the organization, and this is the trust in organizational objectives as well as their priority in supporting the workforce, that service and experience will not be productive. So ensuring trust is a key component to effective experience and service. A recent McKinsey study suggests that there are 4 key actions to build trust with employees. This includes listening to the workers' needs from career opportunities and enablement to personal struggles. But this also includes the tactical guidance that's necessary to make it feasible to execute. Then you need to ensure that this is not a one and done. This guidance is ongoing to support the changing needs of the worker and in the environment in which they work. And most important, and probably the most critical, is to make it personal. We focus so much on simplifying the experience or providing workflow to connect disparate processes, but we forget the most critical need, which is to ensure the worker recognizes the organization is focused on their needs to make them productive. And providing a personalized experience based on who they are, based on all the various attributes of who they are, to ensure that the guidance that is provided is meaningful to them and simplified based on their needs and not just the needs of the broader organization. And beyond the trust, as an organization and as HR, you also need to be able to quantify that trust and service. There are a variety of ways that we've seen organizations do this. The most common is probably with the use of survey results. But we also see metrics used such as reduction in the number of HR support cases, which would hopefully support the need to reduce administrative staff. When we look at trust and service, what we should measure is the use of the service, self-driven transactions, leveraging knowledge content, or any other automated support. This would confirm that the guidance is not only trusted, but personalized. So what is needed to deliver this trusted, personalized service? Well, in this multi-skilled environment, this personalized service must be accessible. This means providing this access across multiple channels. This can be directly through a web interface, but it must also be accessible via voice call, chat, or even email. And of course, it must be via a trusted, secure channel. This service must then be personalized for who you are, what jobs and tasks you perform, where you live and work, but also where you want to be. This means providing guidance through consistent action, as well as appropriate knowledge content based on those attributes. And we know we do not employ the work, but we employ the worker. So for the worker to be productive and effective in their job, they must have opportunities to grow in their career. They must also have personal growth opportunities. So let's talk a little bit about that personalized experience. In this data-driven world we live in, we should never have to ask who you are or require any attributes of who you are. In addition, that data must be secured. And again, because we're in this data-driven world, the organization must have my data privacy as a top priority. And this should be a consideration throughout all levels of service and support. Now, I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, and specifically these tiers of service delivery, or at least the first three. Tier 0 is where you have the content and support that can be automated. Defined rules that can be managed to automate the direct, straightforward support needs. Tier 1 is typically that personalized support. This will require some additional attention, but can still be automated with those additional considerations. Tier 2, however, does typically require specialist support and will typically warrant that personal attention, ideally not automated, to support these service needs. But the one you're probably not as familiar with is what we're calling the personal tier, where organizations have the opportunity to support the worker as a person, not just as a person that completes the work in the organization. So when we think of the employee experience needs of Tier 0, we typically think of the simple transactions requiring minimal data understanding as well as minimal data entry needs. In customer service, but also in HR service, our objective is to focus on automation of services to reduce costs, but also to improve the experience. In this article from ZDNet, they referenced a survey by 1,000 customers using chatbots that indicated that convenience for simple tasks is preferred. Number one reason they would use a chatbot would be to save time. In addition, 54% of the respondents said they would always choose a chatbot over a human customer service rep if it saves them 10 minutes. This also applies to HR for the tasks the employees feel comfortable with and/or have trust in. So workers must be given personalized, automated guidance so they can trust in their process is specific to them based on who they are, where they are in their relationship with the organization. This will ensure that this information and process is relevant to them. They do not need to speak to HR, nor do they want to. Here's one example of this automated personal guidance. So with Oracle Journeys, workers will not waste their time since the process will give them the direction and guidance personalized for them to get the job done, saving their time and effort. With Oracle Journeys, organizations can effectively guide their workers through any type of change. In this example, we have onboarding, but can also include others like transfers, career change, potentially return to work, or any other change that requires guidance for that worker. Step by step, minimized and personalized for them. Going one step further, there are some examples of the service needs that workers commonly have, from understanding of their benefits to ensuring that payroll is calculated accurately, to just general HR inquiries. If workers have access to the information, they can easily manage their needs themselves. Then there's Tier 1, support, which requires more thought to ensure that personalization. This means that additional guidance is required and/or understanding where exceptions can be made. Again, this service expectation is not new. And we continue to evolve the HR service to the consumer service levels that employees expect today. And this definitely applies to the manager experience. Managers typically have many responsibilities and do not want to, nor do they have the time to research how to manage the details of managing their workforce. Their expectation of trusted HR services is that they are guided through the complexities of the worker's terms and conditions, so the manager can minimize the need and minimize the risk to complete the transaction. Oracle Experience Design Studio enables the transaction to be personal, and the manager and the employee, they are based on the manager and the employee they are performing that transaction on. Organizations can configure the rules to ensure that the process, validations, and defaults are personalized for the manager, so they can only see and act on what they need to complete the transaction, and of course move on to other pressing issues that they may have to deal with. Now, Tier 2 typically requires the personal attention and service. This means that guidance is still required, but it is to manage that personal engagement and experience. With Oracle Cloud HR Help Desk, action plans can be defined to ensure that personal support that staff is required to give them the guidance that they need to ensure they're delivering that personalized support to their workforce. Even providing direction when a real-time conversation is needed. Ensuring that the employee, manager, or local HR has the guidance they need to quickly get the job done, but also ensuring guidance is provided when personal engagement is needed. This is especially true for those sensitive employee relations cases. When there are grievances or disciplinary issues, not only are there concerns about accuracy, but also about privacy. Personal engagement is a necessity to recognize the sensitivity of these cases. And HR Help Desk provides that level of sensitivity for the management of these cases in order to effectively manage them in the current environment as well as in the extended environments as well. So there was an article published by Forbes.com last year on treating employees like customers. Why it's your best performance strategy. It states that 30 years ago, we saw the changing Japanese business model to put employees first, treat the employees as customers. And what we found in that is that organizations are still learning, but one thing is certain, if an employee feels like they belong and that the organization is putting them first, they're committed. I found this statement made by the author to be so true. Quote, "After all, when I worked for someone who seemed to really care about me, I thrived. I bent over backwards for the business and dreaded the day I had to move on to my next job. But when I worked for a company where I was clearly just a cog in the wheel, who was expected to be thrilled simply to receive a paycheck, I was far less committed. I still did my job, but I wasn't using my creativity except to look for another gig." I'm sure this statement resonates with many individuals. And this is precisely why organizations have invested in engagement tools, but it must go further to have a personal tier of service to ensure your workforce feels connected with a sense of belonging and commitment. This means feeling connected to the organization and the relationships they have and that they've built within the organization. Oracle Connections provides this with a brand new directory experience. Leveraging Oracle Search, users can search people, departments, locations, or other defining attributes. Here, users can review their own profile as well as others, including personal and organizational details, as well as experience, and find out what others think about them. And as we've seen with the support of diversity and inclusion to support belonging, it's about providing visibility to workers and ensuring equal opportunity to view any and all growth opportunities, including task-based work. Visibility promotes that inclusion by allowing all workers to have exposure to all of the opportunities, not restricting access based on who you are, who you know, or where you're located. And with regular learning and learning paths defined, workers are now enabled to support their alignment to the new goals of the organization. But this personal tier is also about growing their personal reputation beyond their job. Workers can be recognized as an expert based on feedback they receive from their peers and build their internal brand, providing them with the exposure in the organization to be recognized as a leader or an expert. And last, but definitely not least, provide personal growth opportunities that align with the organization's social objective. By providing access to volunteering options managed, supported, and encouraged by the organization, not only provides engagement opportunities to your workers, but also skill enhancement opportunities. These opportunities to get involved in volunteering programs also promotes the continued expansion of and building of relationships with the organization and with others within the organization who have similar skills and interests. So focus on these skills is critical to deliver the modern consumer-grade service and experience your workers will in fact expect today as well as tomorrow. And it is important to note to just focus on employee experience as a workflow or a process flow is definitely short-sighted. In order to ensure effective and productive worker service and experience, you must focus attention on the management of the relationships, the service, and the personalized guidance that HR provides and the trust the worker has in the organization. As stated in this quote from the Harvard Business Review, in 2019, companies spent an average of $2,420 per person on efforts to enhance that employee experience. And the output of that was that only 13% of those employees in the study reported being fully satisfied with their experience. Organizations must recognize and invest in all the tiers of service, especially in that personal tier, to differentiate and compete in this ever-evolving environment. Thank you for joining me today for this session on how to provide exceptional HR service to your workforce. Now on to the next session. Back to you, Pete.
Thanks, Nancy. Ensuring HR feels empowered and confident in supporting employee needs is incredibly important during these unprecedented times.